Okay, so great. We've got a few more people dropping in. Fantastic. So what I really encourage you guys to do is I'm going to be going through some really cool content I've been working on for quite a while. And I really encourage you guys to ask as many questions as possible. So on the bottom of your screen, whether you're on a mobile device or your iPad or tablet of sort or your computer, there'll be a comment box that you can type your questions into. So there's a bit of a chat function. So I'd really encourage you guys to use that and make this call as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you're watching the recording of this and you have any questions, of course, please contact me so we can have a little bit of a chat about it. Fantastic. We have a couple more people joining us. Welcome to the call, everyone. All right, fantastic. So I am going to introduce myself quickly for those of you on the call who may not know me all that well yet. I have been working in the coaching space and especially with people in transition for the past 3 years, a little bit more than that actually. And I've got about over 14 years of experience actually of traveling, moving overseas. And this photo is actually somewhere up in North Queensland of me when I arrived to Australia back in 2010. And transition is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm really excited to deliver this to you guys tonight, because transition is something that I find almost all of my clients struggle with to some extent. Got a couple more joining us. Hey guys, welcome to the call. Great to see more people dropping in. This is awesome. Got great numbers tonight. So just quickly about my journey. So I was born and bred in the beautiful country of Sweden up in Northern Europe, and lived there up until I was about 19 years old when I moved to the US. That was my first big transition and my first big move. And it, at 19 years old, turned 20 when I lived over there, it was a really big journey for me that really impacted how I dealt with transitioning and trying new things and getting to know new people. So it really shaped me, and oddly enough, it did shape my accent as well. Some people on the call who've met me in person know that I sometimes change my accent a little bit. And it's funny because I actually go back to my English, my accent from the US from time to time, which is quite funny. I then moved back to Sweden, did some studying, and moved to the UK, lived there for quite a few years before I came to the lovely country of Australia. Most of you on the call today are from Australia, I believe. But there's a bit of a mix. So I have transitioned in more than one way many, many times in my life. I've moved countries, I've moved cities within these countries, and more importantly, I've had very different types of careers in those different countries as well. So what I'm really keen to share with you is how it kind of worked for me and how this applies to where you might be at right now. A couple more people joining. Awesome. Great to see, guys. For anyone who's recently joined us, there will be a little chat box in the bottom of your computer screen or phone screen. Feel free to type in any questions or comments that you have throughout the call so we can make this interactive and fun. And obviously, I will be sending this recording to you after. So when it comes to transitioning and change, the interesting thing that I notice with people who come and work with me is that they're not so much feeling stuck. If anything, they're feeling really tired, really low on energy, or they might just feel a little bit like they're a bit off course, like they're not really on target in terms of what they're meant to be doing. So I don't always see people as being particularly stuck. If you're on this call today and you're feeling that those energy levels resonate more with you, you're certainly not alone to feel that way. And what I'm going to share with you today, it will very likely be quite useful to help you through that. So the three biggest things that I see people focus on when it comes to transition and change is that they focus on what they don't want, which is a really interesting thing because the mind is designed to delete the negatives. So when you tell your brain to not focus on a green apple, you will have to think of the green apple before you can stop thinking about the green apple. For those of you who've done some personal development and training, that's not rocket science. But the interesting thing is that the large majority of people, including people who are trained in coaching and human behavior, still do this. So that's the biggest pattern I've seen in the last few years working with people in transition, regardless if they're moving overseas or they're changing their jobs or career. The other thing they do is they focus on how much time and energy it's going to take to create the change. Most people that I come across in my work are actually driven by certainty, which means that they're driven by knowing to some extent what's going to happen before it happens. Now, that's kind of impossible actually to know, and also if you focus on too much on how much time and energy it's going to take, and like I mentioned before, if you're already low on energy, there's a very, very high chance that you're not going to start doing it at all. And lastly, it's a pattern which is a very much either or pattern that I see a lot, and I've been guilty of this myself as well, which is either to overwhelm yourself in the details, which kind of connects a little bit to the point above in point number 2, or the whole big picture vagueness. So some people, they get so stuck in the details that they can't see the big picture. Or they are so focused on the big picture, but it's really fluffy, really vague, not very tangible, which means that they can't really get moving with the transition that they want to create because it's so vague. And the steps between that really blurry picture somewhere really far away in the future is very, very different. And it looks really, really far away. And you don't have the steps in between. So how could you possibly get there? In my case, the interesting thing is I did all of these things. When I first came to Australia, I worked in a corporate job for a few years that didn't particularly resonate very much with me. And in that job, as well as in previous roles, I kind of applied somewhat of a process of elimination, which is point number 1. So I worked out through doing all these different things what I didn't want to do. Now, as you can imagine, you can try your way through a myriad of different things, and you may very well end up hitting the mark and stumbling on the passion that you have or what you were meant to be doing. For a lot of people, though, you actually run out of energy before you find the thing, and you find yourself possibly settling professionally, relationship-wise, or just in general with where you're living and how you're enjoying your life. And this is a really interesting concept because you get to a point where, by the process of elimination, as well as spending energy and time on learning, growing your skill set, doing new things and all that. And so the challenging thing there can be that, how do you know then that you've learned enough and tried enough to actually go and create that really vague, elusive big picture that you have? Because most of you on the call, and I did as well, you have something within you that sort of knows what you want to be doing. You have that random dream of, like people jokingly say, let's open a bar or let's open a cafe, or I would love to have a business where I sail around on a boat for 8 months of the year, or whatever that is. But for most of us, that remains a really vague, big picture, far away in the future dream. And that's the interesting thing about transition, that people who focus on the things that are on the screen at the moment, they will really, really struggle to get there. And the biggest challenge then, if this is in fact what most people focus on, they focus on what they don't want, how much time and energy it's going to take, and they overwhelm themselves in the detail or the big picture. The challenge that we run into is pretty much 2 things that I notice a lot, and I talked about this in my communication with you guys before this webinar. What do you actually want instead? If you are not happy with the job you're in, if you're not really happy with your relationship, or if you're not happy with being single and you'd rather be in a relationship, what do you actually want? And get real clarity on that. Because even though you might feel like, I've got a really clear idea of what that is, I bet you it's actually vaguer than you think. So being in a relationship, for example, I was talking to a friend not long ago who was single, and she described that, I'd really like to meet someone nice. And I was like, okay, well, what kind of person are you looking to meet? Describe them to me. And she's like, and she started to go into very nitty-gritty detail. And I asked her, okay, well, how do you want to feel when you're with this person? Because the thing is that this person's not going to complete you. They're going to bring things to your life though. And what are you looking to attract? What do you want instead? If we're looking at career stuff, which a lot of people come to me for in this new program I'll be running through with you tonight, well, what would you like to be doing instead? What specifically don't you like in your current job? And how can we positively word what you would like instead? If you hate doing overtime, what are the hours that you would like to be working in another job? If you really like problem solving, but not the execution of that problem solving, what would that look like for you? You know? And this is the thing where people, again, that focus of being in your head about what you don't want is actually probably more than you think running you from behind the scenes. And that's one of the biggest patterns I work on with people to break and get really, really clear on what they want instead. And there's a series of questions that we can apply going through this thinking. The other challenge I see all the time is, how do I go about creating it? If I know what I want, if I know what that person that I want to date looks like, if I know the dream career that I want, if I know what kind of lifestyle or business I'd like to be running instead, how do I create it? Because either it's so many details to even get started that you just overwhelm yourself and sit down on the couch and go, too hard, won't do it. But this is where you can really start to apply some cool things, because it's a really cool mantra that I use a lot, which is, if I knew how to do it myself, I would have done it by now. Which means that you got to exactly this point today on this call or listening to this recording with what you already knew. You've done the best you can with everything that you have up until this point. But if you're feeling stuck, drained, or low on energy, doing more in this instance will probably not get you much further. So what you need to possibly understand at this stage is that I probably need some help to get me across this hurdle and make sure that I actually create this change or this transition for myself in a way that's going to work. And a lot of people feel this sense of pride, and I used to be very much like this, felt this sense of pride that if you do it all on your own, it's somehow better. It's worth more. It's more powerful to say, oh, I struggled and I struggled and I struggled, but I got through it all on my own. There are some things in life that were simply not designed to be done alone. Transitioning and growing is actually so much better when you invite the right people along. And whether that's a coach like me or someone in your family or friendship circle that can help keep you accountable and inspired and keep your energy up. You know, it's much like, running a marathon. I ran my first marathon a couple of years ago, and I couldn't have done that marathon without, some sports drink on the way, some energy gels, people cheering me on, people going out for training runs with me on early mornings in the lead up, and all those sort of things. So in reality, it's actually much more fun when you share it with someone. And whoever you need to share that with is totally up to you to decide. At the end of the call today, I'm going to be making a special offer to you if you'd like to share parts of this journey with me. If not, that's totally cool. I really want to add value for you today, though, and share with you the methodology that you can choose to use, regardless if you ask someone to help you with this or not. So if the challenge is what we want and how we're going to go about getting it, we also need to get our head around the concept of change. Most cultures have this tale of the hare and the tortoise, which is, one moves a lot faster than the other. But in the end of the day, they both tend to get to the same point. And I often get asked by my clients, well, which type of change is better? Is it better to do fast change? I've got a very dear friend of mine who might be listening into the call today, I'm not sure, who has, her little hashtag do it now, which means get it done right now. If you're planning to do it, just get it done. Just get it done right now. Now is as good as any other time. Not with everything, but with many things. And then there are other people who are very slow, gradual, and prefer that type of change that, is built up over time. It's very reflective, it's really thought through, and it's very sustainable. Now, the interesting thing with change, and after this call, I'd actually really encourage you to hop over to my blog at thebridgecoaching.com.au, because I actually wrote a blog post this week about this, because I've been getting so many questions about which type of change is better. So you can read that there after the call if you want, which goes into a little bit more detail. But the short answer to which type of change is better is that it simply depends a lot on what you're like as a person. Because change is inevitable. One of the core things in life that I believe is that change is the only thing that is constant, i.e. change will keep happening. Get used to it or don't get used to it, and choose to operate at the speed that you like in that change. But realize that there are very different ways to go about it. If you are trying to create change and transition for yourself and someone else, you have to be really mindful of what pace they operate at. Because if you want to, for example, I work a lot with expats where someone might want to move overseas, and then they tell their partner, oh, let's move overseas, let's do this adventure together. But if one of them is a hare and the other one's a tortoise, that, planning that move, executing that move, landing on the other side is going to be so different experience for those two people. Because the main thing being is that they operate at completely different pace. And hence, my answer is very simple when I talk to people about this. It's not all about speed. I firmly believe in taking action. I think action taking is one fundamental thing of transition that people forget about, because unless you're doing something, you're not actually transitioning. Or it might be so slow that even the tortoise would find it, you might find that he's doing laps around you on the course. So it's actually about the steps. So it's about picking the right steps at the right time, and however you choose to mount those stairs on the picture on your screen right now, you can do that super fast. You could run up them, drop something, run back down again. You could walk up them super slow. You could walk up pretty fast, stop at one landing, think about things, go to the next landing. There are a million different ways and different speeds you could get up and down the stairs that you see right now, and change is exactly the same. The fundamental thing, though, that I notice is that there are some milestones and a certain order to create change that really helps, especially in personal transitions. And I would like to, I'd like for you at this point, I'm just going to take a short break and see if anyone's got any questions or anything that they would like to add, because this is where you can choose to put your thinking cap on and think about the change that you might have ahead of you right now. Is it a career one? Is it, a health and fitness one where you've been putting it off for ages? Is it something in your relationships that's not quite right that you need to kind of look at and move your relationship and your intimacy with that person to the next level? It could be a friendship thing. It could be a connection with a friend or a family member, and transitioning into a relationship with that person that's stronger and more meaningful for you. For a lot of you on the call, you probably came here mainly for career and future aspirations, which is a fantastic thing. What I want to encourage you to, though, is to also think about other areas where this might apply, because the 6 key steps I'm going to share with you are very, very applicable across the board. Just going to take a quick pause and see if there's anyone who's got any questions at this stage. Doesn't look like that. Okay. No problem. If anyone's got any questions at all, feel free to pop it in the chat box and ask me, and I'll do my best to answer them all towards the end for now. So when you're looking at transition, and this is a really, really good way of thinking about it. I know the staircase analogy is probably very basic for some of you out there, but think about it this way, because fast is not always better. Slow is not always better. It simply is what works for you. And if you're creating change as a team, please make sure to be aware of how the other people prefer to operate as well, because there might be a part of you that has to move a little bit faster for a short while, and someone else might need to move a bit slower, so you can create change together. If you've only got yourself to really think about in this context, then easy peasy lemon squeezy. It really is about finding out your pace and what you like to do and the order you like to do things in. There is such a thing though, and I will add this before I go into the details, is it's not, you need to generate some level of momentum, regardless of the pace that you're operating in. If you stop altogether in between each and every step, it will get very, very hard to get moving again. So much like, you know, any good marathon runner will say, it's that I'll run, and if I get tired, I'll run really, really slow, but I'll rarely start walking. And that's the whole idea about momentum, that you need to keep the momentum up when you've started, when you've made a decision and you want to continue your transition. Okay, great question, Andrew. Can you elaborate on why people focus on what they don't want rather than what they want? I think this is, for most people, a big habitual thing, to be perfectly honest. I've seen it in almost everyone that I've worked with, as well as with myself. My theory around that is that people very often apply the trial and error methodology, and they notice things in situations that they didn't like. And sometimes it almost is connected a little bit with criticism and judgment. Because I had this conversation with someone the other day. That's a great question, Andrew. When we do something in life, for example, let's say that you put on an event or something like that, and you get 10 people coming up to you at the end, and 9 of them are really, really positive, and they say, oh, that's great, that's amazing, well done, that was a great event, I really enjoyed that. And the 10th person goes, oh, it was fun, but like I didn't really like the seating arrangement and this and that. For the majority of people that I've met, some people might just brush that off and go, oh yeah, whatever, like what does he know about seating at events? He might not know. But the thing you remember at the end when you walk away, for many, many people, is that even though you had 9 positive comments, most people remember the negative comment more. And I think it's something that comes, it's a bit of a longer answer, I guess, but it's something that kind of comes from the ego. And the ego, which is that little voice inside our head that wants to keep us safe and all those sort of things. And I elaborate on this in my coaching programs. The ego has a need to be right, and it has a need to judge. And every single person that I know has this ego side to them. So I think it probably comes somewhere from there, where people look at, there's a need to judge, there's a need to look at the negative sometimes. And unless we consciously focus our energy away from that and focus on what we want instead, that's what we're going to keep serving our brain with. And the dangerous thing with that is that the brain becomes like a bit of a bloodhound, so if you dangle something in front of it, that's what it's going to go looking for. And what in fact, the tasty meat that you're dangling in front of this bloodhound is, I don't want to meet a person who's like this, for example, or I don't want to work in an environment that's in a certain way. The bloodhound will strike out the word don't and start looking for jobs or situations who are in fact the exact opposite to what you said you wanted. So if you're going to create change in a good, sustainable way, that's my theory around it. I'm sure there's a lot of other theories out there as well. But that's a really, really good question, Andrew. And I think it's something to be very mindful of in any goal setting, in any focusing exercise, in any, if you work in a role where you recruit other people, be really mindful of who you actually want. And be really mindful that you never use language like, oh, we don't want this and this, or that, this and the other, but focus on what you do want instead. Now, the last thing about this question, and thanks again, Andrew, for asking it, is self-talk. So self-talk is every single person has it. Doesn't mean we're mad. Most of us have a few different conflicting voices in our head from time to time. But self-talk is a big one. And self-talk can very, very often be negative. And I very often, when I work with clients, I kind of make the analogy with a bit of a radio station. So your self-talk can be, radio, everything is awesome, I can do this FM. or it can be radio. I'm really crap. Why did I think I could ever do this? I suck FM. And imagine your self-talk in your head around this transition or big change you've got ahead of you right now, being everything sucks. How could I ever think that I could do it? It's all crap FM. That is a really sad radio station to listen to. So be very mindful, be very honest with yourself. Sometimes, most of the time, this all happens unconsciously. We don't even realize that we're doing it until someone like me in this webinar right now calls your attention to it. And if you notice that this is happening for you, be really mindful to reword it instead. So rather than saying, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to focus on this. What do you want to focus on then? Oh, I don't want to be fat anymore. Well, what would you like to be instead? I'd like to be of a healthy weight and happy and feeling good about my body. I don't want to be overweight is not an empowering belief, but I want to be fit and healthy and of good body and mind is a much more empowering belief to have. So that would be my little elaboration on that. Thanks again for the question. So let's just have a quick look. Thanks, Andrew. That's great. So if you're going to create a transition in your life, and we're aware of all the challenges that we looked at before, what steps can you use? And I've actually, in these steps, there are some pictures of me, so you can have a little chuckle, because I like to make fun of myself, so you guys can have a little bit of a laugh. But what are the steps that we need to follow in order to create change, whether you want to move fast, whether you want to move slow? Now, the steps that I'm going to show you tonight, there's 6 of them. And these 6 steps I've created and tested with quite a few people by now. And the interesting thing is that every single client that I've taken through these steps of change have applied them differently at different pace. However, they've all come out and set some really cool goals at the other end. So this is a silly picture of me from here in Melbourne a little while ago. When my friend and I did a photo shoot about strength, and she told me to pose and jump and look strong and powerful. So that's what I was trying to do in this photo. We had a really good time. But the key thing in step number 1 is to find your strength and your passion. Very often, whether you're feeling stuck or whether you more resonate with what I said, that you're feeling a bit tired, a bit depleted, a bit like it's all too much, the first thing you got to do is not beat yourself up or look at your challenges and your obstacles, but to find your passion again. So the first part of it is you can do many, many things on this step. There are profiling tools you can do. You can get feedback from people in your work environment or in your family. There are many, many different ways that you can tap into that again. Because the thing is, when we lose our mojo or we lose our energy and our passion, no wonder the transition gets so much harder. And so to go back to the running analogy, when I did my marathon training, you have to go back to finding out why you're doing it in the first place. Why is this fun? Why is this important? And especially introducing a little bit of playfulness and fun in goal setting and creating change, because some of us take change so seriously. And I used to be exactly the same when I was stuck in my old job, and I found this coaching course that I really wanted to study, and I kind of embarked upon that, but I took it all so seriously. It needs to be fun. And every single person I've worked with has a strength. A lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I don't really know what my strength is. I'm not particularly good at anything. Actually, you are. And I can assure you, whether it's a professional thing, something in your surroundings, in your volunteer time, whatever that might be, there is definitely at least a handful of more strengths inside you. So that's where we start. So in order to unpack what that is, I use a couple of different tools with my clients, but this is something you can do yourself as well. So if you are curious to find out more around what types of tools you can use and how, I would really encourage you to stick around at the end of the call and ask me then, or feel free to send me an email via the email I'll supply then. So that's the first key step. So the first step is not to start setting ambitious goals or anything like that, but to find your passion again, to find your way back to what gives you energy. If you have no energy, we need to inject energy. And the easiest way to do that is to look at what you're already good at. Then we look at your challenges. So what are the obstacles that are holding you back? And when you've worked out what your strengths are, you're in a much better position to look at what these challenges are. Because your strengths, and I assure you this, I've never worked with a client who didn't, your strengths will always outweigh your challenges. Your resourcefulness and the tools that you have at your disposal, as you know, as long as you're able to find them, and you know, with a coach or a good friend or someone like that, you absolutely can. You need to identify your challenges though. And very often a good exercise can be, you know, for example, if you right now in this moment, and the reason you're listening to this call is that you want to change up your careers. Write down on a piece of paper after this call, not right now, but write down on a piece of paper, what are all the challenges that you're facing right now? What are the challenges around that? You know, is it uncertainty of what, you know, the type of money you're going to earn? Is it uncertainty around your skill set? Is it, you know, that you're worried what your family is going to say? Is it that your partner doesn't support this? Is it whatever? List it all there. And the interesting thing, what I do with my clients, is that we then sit down and draw out the one or two biggest ones, because there's always, you know how when you have a flat pond of water and you chuck a really big rock in, there is always that big rock that really disrupts the water. And for most of us, we have one or two key challenges that if we address them, the other ones become a lot more manageable. And the most important thing about this step as well is that whenever you give power away and say that the challenge is external to you, you're giving your power and your ability to make a decision away. You actually have ability within you to make any decision that you need to do. Yes, this change will need to be gradual. Yes, you might not need to be able to quit your job tomorrow, but all the tools and resources you need are actually within your reach right now. If you're unable to see them, like I said before, we always do the best we can with what we know. So if you're unable for some reason to see them, tap into them, or feel like you are worthy of them, that's your cue that you need to work with someone else to help you along a little bit. Any questions at all as we go through? Obviously, feel free to pop them in the chat box, guys. I really appreciate the questions before. The next step that I take my clients through, and that you can choose to do, is talk to your inner circle. Now, your inner circle is not every single friend. I mean, if you have giraffes in your inner circle, you'd be pretty lucky. They're like my favorite animal. But talk to your inner circle. Talk to the people that know you. Talk to your, you know, talk to your colleagues. Ask them, you know, what are some things that you think I'm really good at? You can even tap into this as part of the strength finding and passion finding. What do you think I'm really good at? And what are some things that I could really choose to learn from and stretch and grow from? Because your inner circle is basically those people who are important to you. It's not every single friend or family member, but it's those people whose counsel you seek when you're making a big change. It's also the people that you want to bring along. You don't necessarily need anyone's approval, by the way, to create change. You can create change and transition into a new job without asking anyone for permission. But there will be people in your life that are important to you. So tap into your inner circle. Talk to them about the change that you're looking to make. Don't convince them or force them to agree with you, but ask for their honest and constructive feedback. And the interesting thing is, if you tap into the right inner circle people, they know you probably in some ways better than you know yourself. So listen to them. If there is a risk that parts of your inner circle are going to give you information overload or shake your confidence or not support this change that you want to do or whatever it is, remember one of my absolute favorite beliefs of all time, which is receive everything and decide later. If you've listened to any of my previous webinars, this is one that I remind people of frequently, because just because someone gives you an itchy sweater for Christmas does not mean you need to wear that sweater every day. But you can still choose to receive the gift around the Christmas tree and say, thank you very much. That's a great gift, Auntie so-and-so, and take the sweater and appreciate the gesture. Doesn't mean you have to wear it. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Doesn't even have to mean that it looks any good. But the gesture that the person made to give that to you was because that's what they think that you need. You are then within your full right to dismiss that or not. But receive it and save it for later, because if it gets really cold in 3 months' time, that itchy woolen sweater might come in very, very handy. So it doesn't mean that you need to sit there and accept feedback from people, unsolicited and non-constructive feedback that you haven't asked for. But tap into that handful of people, and for most of us, it's 3 to 5 people in your close surroundings. And again, they can be family, your partner, your close friends from childhood, your current friends now, co-workers, etc. So tap into them, because they are an amazing source of information. The next one that I take people through, and that you can choose to do yourself if you want to, is get really clear on your values. So one person that has done a lot of research on values is Dr. John DeMartini. John DeMartini, he's American, he's a coach and professor, and he has been traveling the globe and talking about values for many, many years. And his book, The Values Factor, is actually on my desk as we speak. It's a really cool book. So when you have gone through your strengths, you've looked at your challenges, you've consolidated with your inner circle and asked for their feedback and opinion, and taken as much or as little as you wanted of that on board, then we start looking at what you value and believe to be true. Because your values and your beliefs around what's true and not true is really going to determine your ability to create change. For example, if your highest value is family, connection, love, and balance, to make a really big career change for you, unless you connect that change to those values, is going to be really challenging. Because you might feel that, oh, well, if I do create this big change, then people won't understand me, and, you know, maybe my family will judge me, and blah, 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 blah. And so you settle in a situation at work that you might not be 100% happy with. I've seen this happen with numerous clients, and I've helped them through it successfully, which is a true privilege for me, because unless you can connect the change to what you value and believe to be true, then you're going to really struggle. Believe what you believe to be true, or what in coaching what we refer to as your beliefs, is very, very important as well. A lot of people will have quite a lot of negative beliefs. We talked about that radio station in your head going on, and, you know, I'm crap, how did I think I could do this, blah, 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 FM. Those sort of thoughts are actually beliefs that you have. So things like, I don't deserve it, or I'm not ready, or change is really hard, or change is expensive, or you can't change career after you turn 35 or 40. All those things are beliefs that you have. Now, the really great thing about beliefs is that they can be changed. Values can to some extent as well, but beliefs most certainly can, and I've had that happen many, many times. Because your beliefs won't really, beliefs that won't serve you need to go. And this is a big thing that I do on this level with my clients, is that we look at the ones who can stay and the ones that need to go. And the moment that you identify something that, let's say that, you know, me talking right now led you to understand that, oh, I actually have this really unresourceful negative thought quite often, that whatever it is for you, I'm not worthy to have a job that I really love and enjoy, or that you can't have a happy family life and a really rewarding career at the same time. You need to pick a lane. If you believe that to be true and we were to work together, what we'd have to do as well, when we've identified that, well, that old belief is not really helping me, what can I believe instead? We'd then construct a belief that would help you to create the change that you really wanted. And you might even go and look at people who've done that successfully, people who have a great family life, as well as a really rewarding career that makes them, you know, thriving, happy career that really fulfills them. Look at them as proof and go, oh, well, that's actually possible. And sometimes the biggest reason that we believe what we believe is that when we were little kids, like the girl in the picture on the screen right now, when we were little kids, people taught us what was true and not true. And either you did one of two things when you were a kid, and you didn't know this at the time. You either accepted that to be true, whatever the adult in your life, you know, kinder teacher, parent, grandma, whoever, if they told you that you can't have a career and a happy family life at the same time, it's not possible. you would have done one of two things in that moment. You either accepted that to be true, or you rejected it on some level and said, I don't think so. I don't believe that. And this is why kids in the same family who grew up with the same values, the same parents, in the same place at the same time can have very different views on life. Because in the moment as children, we decide what's true or not. So the sad thing that I realized for myself when I dove into coaching is I realized a lot of my beliefs around money, success, business, relationships, friendships, a lot of them were not very resourceful. And a lot of them came when I started digging. They came from when I was a child. So effectively, adult me in my then late 20s, early 30s was actually ruled by a small child. And let me tell you, it did take a little bit of work to unpack that and get rid of it. But I'm really, really happy that what I choose to believe now, not every day, but most days, is more resourceful than it used to be. And this is a work in progress, I can assure you guys. But be really mindful, because if you don't do this step before we get to the next one, then the next step is going to be really challenging. So step number 5 is goals. This is me about 5 steps before the finish line at Melbourne Marathon in 2013. And as you can probably see on the picture, it was raining, it was bucketing down. My shoes weighed so much more than when I started running, but I was absolutely happy with my time and my experience and my achievement and all the training that I'd done. But the thing is, if I hadn't believed, if I hadn't valued to finish that thing, if I hadn't valued my health and my fitness and prioritized that, if I hadn't believed that I could do it, if I hadn't believed that if I follow this training plan, then I can finish, I would not have looked that happy, let me assure you. I mean, I was lucky that I didn't get injured, but aside from that, and what many of us in life do, is that we hop from, okay, this is my obstacle, I'm going to set some goals, so I'm going to skip this, I'm going to go straight from here to skip inner circle, skip what I value to believe to be true, and go straight to the goals. If you come from a place of challenge and obstacle and go straight to the goal, you've missed a few really, really vital steps. If you're a hare and you like to do step 3 and 4 really quickly, that's fine, but don't skip them. Because what you end up with is a recipe of weird things that are not going to cook very nicely together. So I've found that the magic mixture is to introduce the actual specific goal later on. And lastly, after you set your goals, and by the way, your goals should be SMART, S-M-A-R-T. SMART goals are quite common these days. You can Google a little bit more about that if you haven't heard it before. And you can, the acronym SMART stands for S is specific, M is measurable, A is achievable, R is relevant, and T is timed. So unless you can SMART goal, unless you can be specific about what you want, remember how in the very beginning there we talked about what is it that you want instead. If you can't be specific about it, it's going to be really hard for your brain, the bloodhound in your brain, to go out and look for it, right? If you can't measure it, you know, like how much do you want to learn? What, you know, how much do you need to earn in that job? You know, how soon does that need to happen? If you want to lose weight, how many kilos do you actually want to lose? You know, 10 or 50, it's a pretty big difference, right? It has to be achievable. Like, goals are here to stretch us. Like, the marathon stretched me many, many times over. There were many times I was out running and blisters on my feet and all sorts of things. But I knew all along it was achievable, because I knew with my fitness level and what I'd done before and the training plan that I had, I would get there. But it has to be achievable, because otherwise you're setting yourself up to fail, and you don't need to do that. R is for relevant. Is it relevant for you to do this thing? I mean, not every person wants to run a marathon. I get that. I totally get that. My mum thought I was mad. She would never in a million years consider doing it herself, but it was relevant for me. It was important for me to do it for many different reasons. And the last one is T for timed. So unless there is a timeline connected to your goal, whether it's a big or small goal, how are you going to know that you're done? How are you going to know that you got there or didn't get there? So if you're setting goal, make sure that they are smart and don't skip that step. Most people I see, they miss at least one, often two of the SMART goal setting principles. And let me tell you, it's so much harder, because if you get started on working towards the goal and you haven't set it up right from the start, sometimes you have to do massive amounts of backpedaling or a little bit of self-punishment for, for failing or not quite getting there, when in fact it wasn't very clear from the start. If you think about it from a work project point of view, obviously when you're doing, a big project or a big event or something like that, you'd like the full brief up front. And goal setting with yourself is very much a similar thing. And I guess, again, the biggest thing I want to highlight here, please note that in the methodology that I've tried and tested with several clients with amazing results, is that goals can't come first. You have to tap into your strength and your passion first. You have to look at your challenges and your obstacles. You have to consult the inner circle and bring them along for the journey, because you need them more than you probably realize. You need to reflect on a few things, your values and your beliefs. And all of step 1 to 4 can be done pretty quickly if you're very committed. I have people who have gone through those steps very quickly, but they have also worked hard and done their homework. Then you get to the goal setting. And then you're probably wondering, well, if goals is number 5, what's number 6, Emmy? Well, I'll tell you. The way I operate is to check in and adjust, because the goals that we set are based on exactly what we're doing there and then. But 9 out of 10 times, if we haven't done this specific thing before, we are going to run into some challenges. We're going to need to potentially adjust the timeline that we set. Is that actually realistic? We might have to adjust the specific nature of the goal. You said that you wanted to be in a new role by, in the next 4 weeks. Was that actually a realistic target, or do we need to change that around a little bit? And the biggest thing that I always say is, one of my mentors, she always says, it's better to do something at 80% than nothing at 100%. And that's exactly what step number 6 allows you to do, because when you've set your goals, go out there and try them. Start training for the marathon, start researching new jobs, hop on dating sites if you want to meet someone, or go to a networking event or whatever it might be. Because the thing is, it's only by doing you will know if the actions that you are doing are going to get you closer to your big goal or not. You will not know that by overanalyzing. I see so many people who sit at home and go, I'm just going to analyze this for a little bit longer and then it'll make more sense. Or I'm going to think about this a bit harder, or I'm going to ask so-and-so, or I'm going to research it further. No. You're going to get to a point where you, hand on heart, know that you've got 80% of the information. Start doing something with it. Just start trying things. And this is different from the trial and error blind trying thing that I talked about in the very beginning that I did. This is actually my biggest goal. If I wanted to change careers and I had a specific idea, I want to work in a role that involves people and events. I want to work in a role that filled something like these criteria in this type of organization. Now let me go out and network and test out if the places I'm networking is actually where I'll meet people who work there. How am I going to get closer to working with that type of organization? And it's only by testing you'll know if it works. So that's why, and this is quite unique to the way I operate, is that I always check in and adjust after. Checking in and adjusting the goals is the most important thing, because otherwise you haven't really given yourself a full chance of success. So those are the 6 steps that I recommend that you take. Now, what are some, I want to leave you with some ideas, because you may or may not want to work with someone like myself. So Strength and Passion Finder, there are many tools out there that you can go and do. There's something called Strength Finder. There are disc profiles. There are things like Myers-Briggs, which a lot of employers help you out with. Just hop online and look at different profiling tools. Now, the one thing I will say, and the unique thing when you work with a coach, is that they can help you unpack what that means together. If you just download all these different reports and read them, yeah, you'll get some cool learnings out of them, but you probably won't understand the context of what that means as much as if you work with someone else. And passions. What are you really good at? What are you not so good at? What are things that you really love doing? What would you like to be doing more of? When are you the happiest? Those are some of the things that you can write down right now. Challenges and obstacles, we already talked about that one. Write down your key obstacles that you have. And if you need to do a brain dump on a piece of paper, write down every single one. Every single one. Just get them out of your head. Let the Radio Crap FM run out of fume and literally write them all down. And then circle which one's the big rock. Which one or two things are the big rocks that are holding you back right now. Because you know on some level of yourself, you know what they are. And they are very rarely external to other people. The biggest challenge and obstacles are always internal. It's what you believe within yourself to be true. Okay? Consult your inner circle, get some feedback. What are 2 or 3 things that you're really good at in their eyes? And this is a huge blind spot for most people. We don't know this, right? Also ask them, what are some, if you could give me 1 or 2 things that I could really improve, like, constructive feedback, what might that be? Your values, you can start reading up on things like Dr. John DeMartini's The Values Factor. You can, there's a lot of things written out there. John DeMartini is probably one of the biggest authors that I would recommend if you're curious to find out more about that. With your beliefs, it's more about an honest with self thing. So what do you actually believe to be true? So for example, if you're looking at a career transition, what do you believe to be true about career transitions? So beliefs is anything that comes after, change is ... fill the blank, or career means ... So when you apply meaning to something, that's when you're tapping into a belief. So ask yourself a couple of questions like that, and your beliefs around the challenge you've got ahead of you will come out very clearly. Set your goals, SMART goals, Google it. Depending what site you find them on, the acronym will mean slightly different things. The way I choose to use them is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed, SMART. If your goal isn't SMART and you haven't filled all 5, you're very unlikely to meet it. Also, when you're setting goals, set milestones. Always set milestones, especially if your goal is more than a month away. Set milestones. So for example, with my marathon training, I had to set milestones like by X many weeks before the marathon, I want to be running X far at this pace per minute, right? And if your career thing is a similar thing, so where do you need to be at by certain milestones? When do you need to have your CV reviewed and done? When do you need to be upskilled on a specific thing that you want to learn more about? When do you need to talk to a friend in your network that's a recruiter that can help give you some more detail on what you need to upskill, right? And check in and adjust. So your milestones can be really, really good times. So if you had a milestone that was timed, so let's say in my big goal, 4 weeks from now, I'm going to celebrate the fact that I have now run 30 kilometers, whatever. But if by the time that I get to that month and that 30, where I was meant to do 30 kilometers, but I haven't been able to because I got injured, I couldn't run for that long, then let's adjust and go, okay, well, I couldn't do 30, but what I'll do next week when I've had a few days of rest is I'll run 25 and see how I feel. Because if I do 30, I'll probably injure myself again. So you need to be really mindful of what's realistic and achievable, because sometimes until you take the car for the test spin, you just don't know how it's going to run. Yeah? So what now? My biggest thing to you, whether you're moving fast or slow, is to stop wasting time. Every day that you sit and think about the big change that you want to make, you're wasting time for you. And the biggest thing that I hear all the time, however old the people are when they come and work with me, is that I wish I would have done this sooner. I so wish I hadn't waited this long to create this. It is really, really fundamental, whatever age you are and whatever your challenge is, stop wasting time. I don't particularly care if you want to work with a coach or not. I would highly encourage you to work with someone like myself because it helps. It really speeds things up. Or if not speeds things up, but it gives you clarity on what you need to do in what order in a tailored way for you. Because obviously there's only so much I can share with you in a webinar like this. So stop wasting time. You know what you want on some level. You probably know really well what you don't want. but I know that there's a part of you that knows what you really do want instead. And if you don't feel comfortable unpacking that yourself, please reach out to someone to help you. A good friend, co-worker, past co-worker, family member, it could be anyone you need it to be. Yeah. So what I want to do as well today is I want to open up the floor for questions now. We've got a couple of minutes left. And while you guys think of your questions and type up your questions, I wanted to share with you a special offer that I want to make available to you guys today. So exclusively for anyone who is on this call or who listens to this recording in the next couple of days, I'm offering you a very specific thing. So part of the program that I've shared with you today, so the 6 steps that I take my clients through and that you can choose to do on your own if you prefer to do so, is a strength unpack. So what I'm offering you to do is join me for a 1-hour strength unpack. And I do this with you. If you're based in Melbourne, we can do it face to face. Otherwise, it will be via Skype or phone or something like that. And if you join the call today because you're in a career transition situation, I would be more than happy to help review your CV if you would like me to, as an optional bonus for this. Now, normally I charge $250 for that session alone, or as part of the program. And this also gives you access to the online tests that I use. But if you sign up before Wednesday, the 5th of October, which is pretty much exactly a week from now, so it gives you 7 days to think about it and waste a bit of time before you decide if you want to. But I'm going to offer it to you guys on the call today for only $99. And this is a great value unpack because it actually takes quite a lot of time for me to sit down and review your results and unpack it in a way that makes sense. So I really want to encourage you guys to take this offer up, and it's a one-off. I'm not going to do this again for a very long time for this price. So if you're interested in this offer before Wednesday, the 5th of October, email me on the address on your screen right now, emmy@thebridgecoaching.com.au, to take up the offer. If not, if this is not for you right now, that's fine too. Go ahead and create the change. Stop wasting time. Do something. Make sure that you take some action from this call. Make sure that you share with someone in your surroundings, in your inner circle maybe, what you learned at this call and what you're going to do now as a result of it. And the biggest thing that I want you to remember, if anything from this call, is that most people focus on those things that I mentioned at the start. Choose to be different. Choose to be focused on the things that really matter, the things that are really, really going to make a change for you. And I've had a great time delivering this to you guys. Thank you for the questions that have come up. I'm just going to wait around for a few minutes. If anyone needs to duck out, we're pretty much bang on the hour right now. If anyone does have any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around for a couple of minutes and just see if there are any questions at all. Thanks, Teresa. Great to see you on the call. Awesome. If you've got any questions at all and you don't want to ask them right now in the chat function, that's okay as well. Feel free to email me your questions at emmy@thebridgecoaching.com.au. I have had a great time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a fantastic rest of your evening if you're here in Melbourne, day if you're based in Europe. And I really, really look forward to connect with you in some way very soon. Fantastic, guys. Thanks so much. See you soon, everyone. Bye.